introduce the two Matts up here. Matt, Solo Satoshi, come on up. Matt, Eco Science.
Oh,
Then we've got Mark from Ocean. And then we've got two more fellas, Hobbyist Miner, and then Alex is going to be up here in just a moment to join us. But to kick things off, let's start here with talking about how you got into Bitcoin mining. Personal anecdote, we can just start down. Solo Satoshi, Matt. And what's something Cypherpunk that you have done while in Bitcoin?
So what got us into Bitcoin mining was how expensive, hot, and loud, traditional miners are. Like everyone else, when I first got into Bitcoin mining, I never really knew about the smaller home mining side of things. So my idea of Bitcoin mining was always like a larger industrial sized unit. Well, when I started looking into it, you realize that it's unaffordable to do at home. It's not profitable. It's hot, loud, etc. So we come across a project named VidX and started learning about the open source mining side of things. And that's where our interest and our origins of starting to mine Bitcoin and getting to the space actually came from. And I would say something Cypherpunk that we've really done is build up a channel of distribution to get other people mining Bitcoin at home again too, or just to sort of boost more people mining Bitcoin at home. And that's something that we think has been really cool.
All right. And Matt from Gecko. Yeah, you're right about when you get first to learn about Bitcoin, like my dad was asking me, like, how does Bitcoin mining work? And you have that whole conversation. Then you show him a picture of some industrial miner, like a Raya Farms, like you see these warehouses. So when somebody knows only that about Bitcoin, trying to think of how to do that in your home it's like, that doesn't mind. I'm not going to do that in my backyard, obviously. So you're totally right. I think overcoming that hurdle is probably the first thing that you have to work through. That no, you can do not that, but that at your home. Matt, Gecko.
Hey. The question is
The personal anecdote about mining, and then something Cypherpunk that you have done while in Bitcoin.
My first intro to Bitcoin. I guess technically this is something I realized in retrospect. I was working in a computer repair shop in 2011, 2012. And one of the other techs came in and was talking about something he found online where you could sit where a computer had to solve math problems and it was hit money. There's a 5-minute conversation about that of like, well, he was paid, where's that? Kind of like go and drop and never came back. But then about a year later, April 2013, there was a big bubble. Yeah, wow. It was, the price spiked from $10 to like 200 or something in price time. So it was all on the news. And guy at church asked me if I knew about Bitcoin because he had seen it on the news, and I was the tech guy. I have no idea what that is, so I went home and spent the next 2 days just reading, looking at the concept and the protocols and the hardware and software. Then I started playing with CPU miner, and then built a GPU rig, and the USB block erectors were coming out at that time, so I picked up some of those and started playing with them. So, yeah. Later in 2013, my friend David McKim, we actually started Gecko Science together. He's moved on to building rockets now. Something he made is on the moon. Pretty cool. But he had worked with a guy previously who had GPU rigs heating his apartment all winter. And he's like, oh, what the crap? Like, you knew about this and didn't say anything. So we started just building stuff together in 2013, 2014.
And yeah, Mark, Ocean, how did you get into Bitcoin? What has you, and what's something cypherpunk that you've done? Well, I mean, you work for Ocean, so that's pretty cypherpunk.
Yeah. So I'll give you the honest truth. I was working for a corporation in Michigan at the time around the beginning of COVID, and my company was trying to force vaccinate all the employees. And they threatened to fire any employee that didn't submit to the forced vaccination. So I quit and I hopped into a startup company in Michigan doing Bitcoin mining, and that's where the journey began. And so I guess that's kind of cypherpunk too, to quit, not before us. But along the way, I learned the ropes. I met Luke through some personal connections, and then we founded Ocean together, and I can get more into that later. But I think the question about what's something cypherpunk, I'm gonna say the cypherpunk thing that I could have done and I didn't do because I had the chance. But when we started Ocean, Luke said, "Look, you might start getting a lot of heat, so if you wanted to create a pseudonym, now would be the right time to do it." And I didn't do it. I just kept my real name, and I think I missed the boat on that. So Mark is my real name.
Okay. Alex, how about you? How did you get into Bitcoin, and what's something cypherpunk related to Bitcoin that you have done?
I kind of stumbled into it. I had a weird direction into. I mean, I was working in social work for a while, and I realized if I was going to do that, I was going to be poor, and I needed to figure out how to, invest my money. And got into Dave Ramsey stuff. That guy hates Bitcoin. But it just got me thinking about money, and I stumbled across Bitcoin on YouTube and became really fascinated with it. And I started reading about the way that money impacts our culture and society, and just became fascinated with that, with the way that, I was studying in school about, social work and psychology, and then seeing how, the way that people use money, when you're able to save money, you're able to think a little bit more long term, whereas if everything's based on debt, it's very short term thinking. Was really interesting, but I got very, very particularly interested in 2020 around the COVID lockdowns, and seeing the money printing, where that is really where I lost my job, and decided to, try and work in this industry. In 2021, I started selling Bitcoin miners with a company called Kaboomerx, and had a ton of fun with that. I mean, taught a lot of people about miners. At the time, the S9 was really popular, which is a really, good unit for learning on, because you could run it on, your normal 120 volt outlet. But I guess something kind of goofy and stuff. I mean, I've lost a lot of money tinkering with lightning nodes back when they were hard to be used, but not knowing what I was doing. But something kind of funny I did was I heated my whole house, for a period of 3 or 4 years with Bitcoin miners, and I did a lot of the electrical wiring myself, and had no training in it whatsoever. But mining taught me a lot about the way that electricity works, the way that energy markets work, and my interest in Bitcoin brought me there.
Hobbyist Miner?
Yeah, so for me, back 2017, 2018, very much heard about this whole mining thing, and was probably one of many people where I bought up a whole bunch of just regular computers off Craigslist or whatnot, eBay, tried to run them in my basement on, I don't know if anyone remembers a website called MinerGate. It was an application you could run on your desktop. It would utilize your CPU and your GPU, and it would also go ahead and profit switch. And you would just have all these different coins. And I did it for 3 months, and I wasn't rich after 3 months, and so I was like, I'm selling this, this is ridiculous. So I returned back to it during COVID, looking for another avenue to earn money. And that's when I started my YouTube channel. And it was literally this is my first GPU, the GTX 970, and I could barely afford it then, $100 graphics card. And I remember using an old iPhone SE, recording hey, I know nothing about mining, but I'm going to create a YouTube channel during COVID and just educate people as I learn. And that's exactly where the channel took off from there. And just as you had pointed out, like that grew into now all of a sudden I'm working with my electrician, doing electrical work, like learning to repurpose the heat, you know, learning about airflow. Like all of a sudden, it's just crazy to think how mining forces you to become learn about everything in that whole cycle, which is wild.
So the Bitcoin white paper says a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Is there anything that we are not doing as miners that is failing to embrace Satoshi's vision, the cypherpunk roots of what Bitcoin is meant to be? I mean, what Satoshi envisioned it as. Is there any clearly missing spots right now, that holes to be plugged in the ship? This is for anyone that's got any kick us out.
I'll jump in real quick. As miners, we always chase profitability, regardless of the byproduct of that. So like the panel I was just on before this great conversation on core and knots, traditionally most miners don't care because it's not directly affecting them at that moment. And it really starts to go away from what actual, Satoshi developed everything for, and versus now, and I get it. I'm one of those people where like, I'm just looking at where am I making my next dollar? Where can I make the most amount of money at the end of the day? And I think that's a big challenge and a big problem, is that we forget what we're actually doing it for.
How many, Matt, since as far as I know, you're the only retailer of hardware up here. Okay, so both of you, I guess it's for both of you, Alex and Matt.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. My apologies.
On retail.
Okay, so for everyone else that's up here, how many of the people that are coming to you from like the home side of things are coming for ethical reasons? Oh, I want to help decentralize the network, pointing to the name of the panel here, Great Re-Decentralization. Because I know that's why people call it a toy, but why I got my original little 1 terahash miner. I was like, I just wanted, I never mind, and never done anything. I wanted to participate, even if it was kind of a joke, a drop in the ocean. Wanted to do something. How many people would you say are coming to you for that reason, as opposed to, oh, I need to make income?
Well, I think what's important in our space is that we don't mislead anyone into assuming that home mining is going to be profitable. So those types of things are generally said up front, although everyone likes to highlight when a block's found. It's exciting, right? It's cool. It's like one of the coolest things. But I would say traditionally the people we deal with, it's kind of split between people who look at it from a quote unquote like lottery aspect, and then a quote unquote like we want to decentralize or participate in the network. So I would say it's split. Our customer range is from really experienced people who run mining farms. Like we've had people pass by our booth who run major large operations, but they want to keep something really cool on their desk, And then it'll go down all the way to people who are like, I just want to mine Bitcoin and see what it's like, how easy it is to set up, So I would say it's pretty split. It's pretty split.
On the content creation side, Hobbyist, is that similar to the people coming to your channel? Would you say it's some people like they're just kind of dabbling, I just want to see what this is like, or I want to help the network? Like, what would you say that breakdown is?
Thank you. That one on? All right, cool. Yeah, so my channel definitely ranges. So you absolutely go from the individual like you're speaking to, which is like, I want to proof of concept this out, because people still look at it as like funny money, right? And they're like, I don't even know if this is real. And I always tell people, like, first time I actually had with that GTX 970, I was mining Raven coin with it. First time it hit my wallet, I was sold. I was like, oh my gosh, I made that. So those individuals are the ones that come to the table traditionally. But then I have the flip side, which are people that are like, I have $750,000 that I'm giving to the IRS unless I can go ahead and reinvest it. I've heard Bitcoin is a great avenue. So unfortunately, our scene is so small that even as a content creator like myself, I'm not like compartmentalized off to be like just home mining, which you'll see on my channel goes all the way up to mining farm tours and having that opportunity. So it's really all over the place. And I think that's what makes it exciting. I very rarely see people getting back to it come in and be like, oh, I just want to help out the network. I want to be part of that type of deal. Usually, that lottery miner is what sells people on the philosophy of Bitcoin mining, and then they're hooked. And then next thing you know, it's a year later, and they're like, I bought all these miners, I have them hosted. So it's a gateway, we'll say.
It's good because it gives people something tangible that they can tie to Bitcoin. Like when you first learn about Bitcoin, it's like magic internet money, right? And you start asking more questions once you accept the fact that it actually exists. And it's, you're like, where does it come from, right? Well, now you have, for years you've had things that you can fit in your hand and actually prove that this is how Bitcoin is created, or here's how it comes into existence, But that's one of the coolest things is that, like the smaller miners, they give people something tangible, like physical, to bond to Bitcoin.
Mark, on the ocean side of things, how many people do you see? Because I was talking to a guy at the dinner last night that he got into Bitcoin, similar to many of us here, just kind of dabbling, heard about it at one point. One of the guys at the table asked actually a really good question. He said, when did you first ignore Bitcoin? And then when did you first pay attention? So I was like, that pretty much is the story for everyone. It's like, oh, I heard about it back in this time and didn't do anything with it. But on the ocean side of things, how many people come, it seems to me, that they point their BitX, their whatever, at ocean, and then they go, I want to point more hash rate to ocean. How much of that kind of individual are you seeing, or are you aware of?
Yeah, well, I'll start off by saying that we're decentralized, so we actually don't know who our customers are officially. We have relationships and things, but we're the only mining pool where you don't need an account and you don't need to go through the setup process. You just simply point your Bitcoin address. But our payout model, as Mechanic described earlier in his keynote today, we're a luck-based pool. So you get paid out in the blocks when we hit a block, and there's no guarantee. And the advantage of getting paid out in a luck-based pool is that because there's no middleman, there's just more money to go around. In the FPPS landscape, the FPPS pool is both the mining pool and the insurance provider. And so there's a cost of the money that they pass on to you in the form of invisible fees. So usually when we're onboarding miners, they may have hundreds of petahash. In the early days, we were sub 1 exahash for a long time, and that was a rough start. But now we're around 20 exahash. But we're talking to a miner with 1 to 5 exahash, and they're going from an FPPS pool that says you're going to get paid out no matter what every day, like clockwork, to come mine on ocean. If we hit a block, you get paid. If we don't, well, I hope you have some savings. So
That's a lot of capital right there.
It's a bit of a bumpier ride, but so they usually start off with a small test. We usually recommend, throw us 10% or 5% or 10 machines or whatever. Run it for 60 days and then compare the numbers. And like 99 to 100% of the time, the test goes so well that they just YOLO in after the fact. So we see a lot of our growth is because the miners who are mining with us now started testing with us 6 months ago, and they really like the economics. And again, we're not doing anything special. We're not manufacturing Bitcoins. The only thing we're doing is we're getting out of the way and we're letting miners interact directly with the network. And then because when you remove the middleman, there's just more money to go to the people actually doing the work.
How much of that is driven economically? A hobbyist was saying earlier that most of, you said all miners only care about the bottom line, more or less. But I find that hard to believe because technically I mine and I don't care about the incentive because I know, sure, there's a chance that my BitX can hit a block, but that's not why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm doing to participate, to decentralize the network. That's why I'm doing it. How many of the people, anecdotally, I know you don't have hard numbers, are coming up to you and saying, I pointed at 10%, 5 machines, whatever the case is, at Ocean for the economic reasons, and some people going, I don't like how much centralization there is with these pools, so I kind of want to help out. And then they look at the dashboard and they go, oh, that's actually a pretty good thing to do. Maybe I should point, like you said, YOLO into it.
Yeah. So we have a couple of thousand miners, 2,000 or 3,000, and on the website ocean.xyz, you can just look at the workers. So the number of workers is the number of unique Bitcoin addresses that essentially are miners. I would say probably the majority of those, they joined because of the mission decentralization, but the majority of hash rate belongs in the top 10 to 20 addresses. And those guys are in it for both decentralization and the money. But I joke that miners join Ocean for the mission and they stay for the money because they like the higher rewards, which on average, and I'm not exaggerating here, on average, it's 1 to 3% per year higher than FPPS. And that's essentially, if you, Parker Lewis has a great line that FPPS is, when you're with an FPPS pool, you're paying for a hedge on variance, but you can't quantify the cost of the hedge because it's bundled with the pool fee. So it's cheaper to go mine individually and then go to the bank and get a hedge on variance than it is to stick with your FPPS pool, because they're doing that. They're getting the loan, they're paying the interest, and they're passing it to you in the form of invisible fees. So when you just cut that out altogether and you're able to, it's like driving on a dirt road with a couple of bumps, maybe a pothole here and there, versus a smooth, freshly paved road, you're just going to get more money at the end of the year.
Now, on the side of worrying things, we were talking, or Mechanic talked about the centralization, Ant Pool, Foundry, these major pools. Is there anything aside from that, the pooling that is worrying on the centralization front? Any of you guys can take this one?
I like diversity that pools offer, and I really like what Mark said. I think one mistake a lot of miners make is I think it's really important to test out the different pools and their payout structures. I think that's a great strategy, and I'm not really sure why more people don't do that. But yeah, centralization is always a concern with Bitcoin, and I think what decentralization means is just how difficult is it to consolidate control. One thing that has been interesting to watch is the hash rate growth in the United States, because I feel like the United States is one of the areas that has the most control over the global financial system, and it oftentimes is very aggressive. You've got groups like OFAC. So I think that's a huge risk of having so much hash rate here. Also, the hardware manufacturing is an issue that, I don't know what the percentage is, but the majority of machines running in the world, like a vast majority, probably the 90s%, are Bitmain. And so it has been exciting to see other manufacturers come along. And while I don't think the BitAx really distributes hash rate in a meaningful way, what I really like about the project is that people are going through the process of learning how to manufacture electronics, and building out these supply chains, because, my hope is, like a strategy that I did, I had people that would buy a single S9 from me, get hooked on it, and then go and proceed and, do very large deployments, and we'd have a really cool relationship, for a long time. And I think, like Matt was saying, having like a tangible object in your hand is, I've seen this experience a lot, with like my family members and friends that are trying to teach about Bitcoin. I go pop a Bitcoin miner down and they see something, physical, and for whatever reason it clicks something in their head. The pool stuff's always interesting to watch and to look at. Ocean's definitely been, one of the loudest, groups of individuals pointing out the potential issues there. Fortunately, I don't think we've seen any disruptions yet, but that doesn't mean that we won't see disruptions in the future. And so I think it's really important to, really drive in the narratives that are important about Bitcoin, about, the ability for us to use it, to own it without confiscation, and that miners, respond accordingly in the event that there's something, problematic that happens that fools do or governments do, that they can, be nimble and switch and, put up legal fights, and, use their economic power that they have to really, prevent major issues from happening.
So something you said there is that a lot of the hash rate is coming from the United States. How concerning do you think is on the energy front of things? So there are obviously there's a lot of miners in here in Texas. On the energy front, do you think that's a point of centralization that is overlooked? Hobbyist or any of you guys that deal with energy on a large scale? I mean, energy's got to come from somewhere. Is that a place that people are not paying attention to? We talk about these pools all the time, but maybe people don't.
Something we've definitely seen over the last few years is just the change from one administration to the other in the support of crypto and the growth of crypto, especially within the United States. And I do agree with you. Like, you can look at it and yes, is it more centralized? Yes. However, it's not like we're centralized. I mean, one could make the argument, oh, you centralized to one pool. That's the United States, right? And that's where it's all coming from. But I don't think any of us as miners are concerned about the United States growing as a bigger hub for crypto. I mean, we've for so long been behind the ball of like Bitcoin and crypto mining being illegal that now we're like, hey, the more hash rate, the better in the US, the more support, the better in the US, the more exchanges we can get in the US. So that's one area of decentralization that I honestly don't really have any concern about. I don't know if anyone else would disagree on that though.
The grid is the concern primarily, or is your question primarily wrapped around the grid?
Energy or sources of energy. Is that a place that
the grid is privately owned in Texas. I mean, there's no incentive to shut miners off. As a matter of fact, the miners help balance the grid I mean, it's a good point. I don't know that I've ever put any thought into it. From what I know, I used to be in the high voltage industry. We would build substations from the ground up and electrically test them. So before handing them over to the customer, but larger mining facilities tend to benefit the grid more than hurt it. So I don't think I've ever thought about that being a potential point of failure.
So you mentioned something about testing, about how people will test. They don't test. You were saying that once they get on a pool, they're just kind of good with that. Do you have any idea, Hobbyist or any of you guys others, why that is? Well, why is it just like with so many things, like so many different boomers that I talk to and where I work at the hardware store when it comes to Bitcoin, it's like, I don't need to do that. I've got my bonds, I've got my 3 real rental properties, I got whatever, but I don't need to think about something new. This is working well for me. Is it the same mentality from Bitcoiners? Like, why not test things? Like,
yeah, I get a lot of people that ask the question and I laugh at it a lot, which is like, what's the best pool to use? And it's like, man, that is a massive question. And it's not just like, feed it to me, because it really comes down to, I always try to encourage people. And I love what you said earlier about like testing. And I know not everyone's in that situation, but like take 3 miners that are identical in every way and put them on 3 different pools that are totally different. And then go ahead and look 3 different wallets and look at how much Bitcoin you're getting at the end of each month to that wallet when it's gone past full fees, when it's gone past withdrawal fees, because that's the hard part with pools. A lot of people I know, they'll go out there and look at pool fees and they're like, okay, that's the lowest, that's the best pool. And it's like, that is not the case. You want to look at like how much Bitcoin you're actually getting to your wallet, not that accumulates on the pool. And you also have to look at like, you don't know what that behavior is going to look like as to where that stratum's going to be and like how good of that ping is going to be to that pool and how your miner is going to perform. So I always recommend people try to test the best they can. And it's not test this miner on this pool this week and then test next week, because it has to be in the exact same moment. You got to start those miners at the exact same time. They have to boot up the exact same time, because that's the true way to test it. Go in week by week, man, the network is totally different one week to another.
yeah, it's a good point. Thing you mentioned, I didn't even think about that, like how much time it's going to take for your miners to talk to the pool. So there's a lot of debate. You guys, a couple of you were up here talking about core, nods, and the JPEGs, AI. What are some bridges that can be formed between all of these different parties? Because I think one thing that basically anybody can agree on is that we don't want Bitcoin to just go up in smoke. Like there's so many people's livelihoods, entire life savings are tied up in this thing that I think that's one area that we can certainly agree on. It's like, let's keep Bitcoin alive at the very least. So what are some bridges that we can build for people that might not see eye to eye on everything?
You know, I think that we're like a lot closer aligned than what it appears on X. I see the online discussions. I hear what goes on behind the scenes, and I think it's like 95 to 99% of the stuff, everybody's on the same page, and we're arguing over the 1%. And the thing I've heard the most recently is, and I think we've progressed to like arbitrary data is a year or 2 years ago, it was kind of controversial, and now I hear a lot of people saying, you know, we everybody agrees we don't want spam on the blockchain, but we disagree on how to mitigate it. And so I don't know. I think if we focus on some of the similarities and I don't know, just acknowledging that we're on the same page for like 99% of it, I think is the first step. And then you have like a good discussion and there's civil discourse after that.
Matt, haven't heard from you of CoinGecko in a little while. Would you agree there?
Yeah, I was rolling through some thoughts. Could you repeat the question real quick?
It involves building bridges among all these different factions. You've got core, you've got nuts, you've got people that are looking, they've got their farms are looking at pointing some of their compute power at AI. It's a lot of different factions. And if you look on X on any given minute, it looks like there's just these massive warring parties. But I think Mark is right that there's a lot more agreement. I think it's true across the board, just in anything. There's way more agreement about what we want. And at the end of the day, I don't know why everybody would be here if you wanted Bitcoin to die. So I think people want Bitcoin to survive. So what are some bridges that we can form so we look past those or deal with those points of contention?
I don't know, one thing I'd like to see is kind of more general adoption of value based on utility. So like with the Square announcement thing is going to be expected to be pretty big.
There's the Square now.
Yeah,
Big, yeah.
as Bitcoin becomes more common use as currency, with just making transactions and stuff instead of being discussed conceptually as investment vehicle or savings or something. So be more willing to find common ground because the conversation will be a lot easier because Bitcoin would be a more common topic and less obscure and like, oh, isn't it for drug dealers? And no, it's money. It's just money.
Yeah, I've been following some of the tweets, people talking about that. You're just saying that merchant, that Square merchants, that map just keeps on getting more populated. And I imagine there's going to be people like myself mentioning to retail people, hey, I see your Square thing. Do you accept Bitcoin? Like those conversations are going to be happening. They've got 4 million merchants across the world or across the U.S. alone, I think. So that's a lot of the possible adoption right there. Matt, you were talking about nodes. Do you have any ideas on how to incentivize nodes, or do we not need that many more? Like if you look on Time Change Calendar right now, there's it fluctuates, but around call it 22,000 nodes online at any given moment. Have you had any ideas about how to, or anyone, on how to incentivize people to run a node?
Well, having the opportunity to run a node, it's a great example of like nodes. I never dabbled into Bitcoin nodes on my YouTube channel at all up till about like 3 weeks ago. And I always wanted to. I run a decent amount of solo miners at home, which I talked about earlier about always chasing profitability. Man, there is something about solo mining with like lottery miners. It is like, it hooks you. But I finally decided to go that node route and set up my own node. Umbrel OS makes it very, very easy. But I have talked to probably 30 people in the crowd here who like reached out to me and were like, dude, I set up a node after watching your video. And it's amazing. So actually then Umbrel had hit me up not too long ago. We're like, dude, we're seeing a massive download increase since then. People just looking for an opportunity that never would have set up a node just to participate, to be a part of something. And they love it. And it's not profitable, but it is definitely, I think it's growing more and more. You talked about like incentive to be a part of that. And man, I think people just want to be included in something new, something different, something, cypherpunk roots out there for sure. And yeah, it's been a great experience with nodes. And I think that's why we're seeing nodes take off now more than ever. And I don't know about you guys. Do you guys carry any solo nodes on your site?
Not yet.
No,
2026.
It is a huge increase. They've been, I mean, if you don't want to set up your own, which anybody could do it really with a computer, regardless of age, it is definitely something that I encourage. And I'm seeing just resellers that I work with that are selling out of nodes left and right. People just want to be a part of it.
I think. Oh, sorry. I was gonna say I think something that will boost adoption is people becoming their own merchant, using like BTC Pay server, accepting Bitcoin as a payment. I think what Jack is doing is very important. It onboards a lot of people who already have the, that infrastructure. But for people, we also need to keep in mind that you can also do that from your own node too, and you own all the data. You're not transferring that data to anyone, and it's a sovereign way of doing your own invoicing, doing your own accounting on the Bitcoin side. All of that can be done through BTC Pay server. That's who we use. That's how we use it. And I think that's a massive onboarding potential as well outside of solo mining, because I think solo mining is another good incentive to run a node. Because when you are like truly solo mining, the pool operator doesn't have all of your private information, like your IP address and stuff like that. So yeah, I think like more adoption and on the payment side of things increases node adoption as well.
Two thoughts on how to incentivize more nodes. I think one of them is just education. Like when the first time I heard mechanics say the main thing that separates Bitcoin from Ethereum are nodes. Like on Ethereum, I don't know how many nodes, but I've heard it's like a handful and they're all on AWS, right? So when Bitcoiner, like we're Bitcoiners and we're in this because we're crazy and we believe in the future of money. And if you hear the science that what makes Bitcoin different is decentralization, and it's only decentralized if everybody runs their own nodes. Like we've already taken the leap of faith, so it's not that much more effort to go and do it. So just continuing to preach the message that decentralization of nodes is important, and it's important to run a node. And I just think people have the capacity to do it. They just need to hear the message. And the other good thing that we could do, I think, as builders is start to integrate nodes into some of the products like Square. Imagine if every Square terminal in the world had a Bitcoin node backed into it and they were directly interfacing with the network. Well, how many terminals did you say there are?
Well, there's 4 million merchants. I don't know how many actual terminals that is, because some stores are going to have multiple.
Okay, so call it a million. Imagine like we could just like thrust 1 million nodes onto the network. That would be huge. At Ocean, we built Datum, which is essentially a Stratum server that piggybacks on a node. But we're working with some container manufacturers like Digital Shovel, so that when they ship the containers to the site, it comes equipped with the Datum server, which has a Bitcoin node. So if there was a way to shrink the form factor and get it in a BitX, that would be cool. Or maybe in the future there was a question about like the development of BitXs and whatnot, but I think it's great. It's like open source development, and it's going to pave the way for integration of mining into other heat reuse technologies at home, like water heaters and things. Can you imagine buying a water heater, like, and you're using it for the heat, and the Bitcoin mining is just the mechanism, but it just comes equipped with a node? And like, if we can get to the point where we're running a node and we don't know we're running a node, I think that'll be cool. Yeah, we could just integrate it into the products.
Also making it more affordable too, right? Like the hardware has become rather expensive. I'm not like a super Bitcoin OG, but my first node was a Raspberry Pi with Umbrella OS on it. And it was beautiful to do, right? It was a few steps. You kind of felt like for me, it was a very empowering moment, almost like plugging my first miner in for the first time. But the hardware has become rather expensive. I think if we can reduce a lot of the overhead, that it's like on these servers themselves and go back to like a grassroots Bitcoin node. Like on, you have your you have whichever client you run. You have a Lightning node, and then maybe just it's simply there's another edition where you can connect to like a Stratum client or something if but I think a lot of the overhead applications on nodes require higher higher performing hardware, which just makes it more expensive for people, and people are a lot of people just want to see like what is this going to do for me, and if it's over a certain price target, then sometimes it has to make sense for people. I think reducing some of that, those things that require all of that processing power and getting more back to a grassroots Bitcoin node can also boost adoption as well.
So for those of you that do sell things, Kaboom racks being in your history, what do you think there is a sweet price point where people could see that as like an add-on? They're going there to buy a couple things, they're dipping their toes into the mining world, and then you see an add-on. Hey, would you like to add a node? What do you think that price point would be? So if there are manufacturers that are looking to supply some of those parts, like you were saying that it was pretty, I don't remember what I paid in full to build my node, but I think it was like $200-ish after it was all said and done. I got it all pieced out, the Raspberry 5, I think it was, and the terabyte hash, the SSD. I've since upgraded to a 2 terabyte because it was running out of room. But what do you think that price point is? It seems like 150, 200 maybe is kind of
I would like to see it around $150. I mean, that's way over a 50% reduction in price of pretty much anything you can get on the market today. I think the price decrease, an excessive price decrease of that much would incentivize people to buy their first one and start tinkering around with it.
I wonder how much of what you were saying about seeing your water heater or your fridge or whatever, like the stuff's already in there. They all these machines that we have computers in them at this point. Your toaster, your Keurig, and whatnot. I think it's more of a space. So if you can slap a 2 terabyte hard drive on there, you can run a node. Like the software to run a node is, I don't know, it's tiny. It doesn't take much room at all. It's the chain itself that you've got to store. So let's move into what it might look like in 2030. Let's just go down the line. Let's start down here, Hobbyist. What do you think hash rate is going to look like? We just passed. We're into a zeta hash realm now. How high do you think that's going to be in 2030? And then also, what do you think it's going to look like on the decentralization front? Do you think that we are going to have fridges and Keurigs and Mr. Coffees and water heaters and your pool pump and all this that's going to have nodes and Bitcoin miners in it?
Yeah, so from the hash rate side, you can look at it and man, it is just an upward roller coaster climb right now from a network hash rate. And I don't see it going anywhere. Massive mining farms are every other day. Texas is a great home for it. Iowa, we're seeing a lot of them start up there. So, I mean, by, it's not that crazy to think. 2030 is not that far out. But yeah, I mean, you're probably maybe 3x where we are right now, which is crazy to think about. But when you look at that time period, 4 years, absolutely. The other question that you'd asked about is like where we are with like devices and all of that, what it is. I think I do like the argument of a node. I think more people, you had alluded to earlier about being incentivized to run a node. If there's some avenue that can incentivize it more than what it is right now, I actually did a poll on my YouTube channel not too long ago, just gauging where people's spend was and capital was for home miners. And it came in at $25 to $250 for their first miner. So to give you an idea, that's, a BitAxe or the Gecko Science small units. I mean, you would have to have one of those units and a node packaged together, which I think is awesome. I think that educational piece of selling both of those together is super valuable. I would have been much more equipped if that was what I bought as the first device that I purchased versus just going ahead and buying the miner. And I do see that growing over time.
Alex?
Yeah, I just want to clarify real quick. I work with a company called Mega Miner now.
No, I always mention it, Kaboo Backrack in the past.
Yeah.
Sorry, what?
hash rate in 2030? What's your vision for the future? Where is mining going, the hash rate, and then also are we going to have TVs with nodes and mining and heating and all these various things?
I don't know. I think it's really hard to predict. This is one of the things that's really difficult about mining in general. Is it's very difficult to forecast profitability. One of the things that's easy to forecast is a network hash rate. It just keeps on going up pretty rapidly, but it's hard to know what's going to happen. I started working in mining right around the time of the China ban, which was a massive change in where the hash rate was located around the world. A lot of stuff was getting shut off in China. People were chartering airplanes and filling them with Bitcoin miners and flying them to Texas, trying to get them on wherever they can. And it was really this. If you were a miner and you had hash rate online, it was this incredible moment where there was massive network difficulty. And you look at the world around us today, and it's just increasingly growing more volatile. The geopolitical situation right now is nuts. I work. The work that I do is a lot of importing stuff from other countries around the world, and so we're constantly trying to arbitrage. The constantly changing or potentially changing tariffs, shipping costs, all of these things. And one thing that we're seeing a massive change in is chip manufacturing and where it's located. So there's a lot of stuff coming online, or a lot of fabs coming on in the U.S. And a move from Taiwan. The geopolitical situation with Taiwan is an interesting one to watch for. But the way that I've seen mining change over the last 4 years, the BitAxe is a relatively new development. The power density has increased dramatically. There's been moves. It almost was entirely air cooled. Immersion was a thing. That was kind of a fad that seems like, it's still being used in some circumstances, has fallen off a little bit. Hydro has grown a lot. I have customers that are heating their homes with hydro units, like the M64 is a really interesting, it's a single phase hydro unit made by MicroBT, and people are heating their pools with that, whereas in the past they were doing it with immersion. So I think there's going to be a lot of tinkering, and it's hard to project what's going to be successful. I just don't know if it's going to be cost effective or efficient to put ASIC chips in your refrigerator. But there's going to be a lot of cool things that people do. I think just home heating is the obvious one. Like Canon sells some really cool units, like the Canon Q and the Mini 3, where it's just a relatively easy plug and play solution to begin heating your home on just your normal house outlet, instead of having an electrician come in and wire, arguing with your wife about the dryer plug. I think there's going to be more open source solutions like that, where there's experimentation. People prove that it's a product the market wants, that works well, and more people will come to market, and it's going to be, really fascinating to watch.
Mark?
So, hash rate predictions and
Hash rate prediction, and then also, what kind of innovations do you are you aware of, maybe and thought of, dreamt of, that you can see? Putting an ASIC in a fridge, maybe not, but heating your pool, are we going to see more of that? I mean, we've got so much talk, especially like you mentioned in heating pools. There's so many people talking about how it's a complete waste of time and money to go into the higher education when you can go and be saddled with all this debt. I'm bringing this around to Bitcoin Watch. So what you are seeing is more and more people going, oh, I can just go into a trade. I can pay this with what I have in savings already. I can be making money out the door. People are begging. I know a guy who is now working for a plumbing outfit, and he's making, I don't know, way, way, way more than he ever would have by going to school for 4 years and then trying to get a job. Oh, look, I've got a BA in whatever, and Starbucks is like, oh, we're fill up on those. But he can go and do plumbing and be making, I don't know, I think like $50, $60, $80 an hour, depending on what he's doing and what and then like the trajectory for that line of work is just up and to the right. And I think as more and more people our age and younger people are going into the trades and then bringing the knowledge of Bitcoin, I think you're going to see, like you said, it's hard to predict, but I think you're going to see more innovation and going, hey, can I hook up some heating to this thing? Oh, hey, my mom's a gardener and she wants to heat her greenhouse in the winter. I could do some Bitcoin mining thing there. So what things do you think we might see on that front? And then also, yeah, you were the only one to give a solid prediction. You said 30x from here. So in 2030, you could see as much as, what was that, 3 Zeta hash at that point? Do you think that's something you're about right?
Yeah, like the year-over-year growth is around 30%, so that takes us right to the 3 Zeta. I think it's going to happen for sure, and I think we're going to be living in a much different world from a pool landscape perspective. Right now, we've started to see the kinks in the armor of FPPS. Like Ocean came out, and we were very critical of the payout model, that it's like very unfairly weighted in favor of the pool and not the miner. And the reason is because starting up a pool by yourself like we did is a very difficult proposition, because you have to find enough blocks every 2 weeks. So most of the pools these days are just a variation of FPPS, but they're really just a proxy for Ant Pool. So there's Foundry, and then there's Ant Pool, and there's like 10 proxies that are really just Ant Pool under the hood. And that is just not sustainable. Like once enough miners realize that they're leaving 5% profit on the table because they're with that pool, they're going to switch. So I think the model of cooling is going to, it's going to shift towards more what Ocean's doing, more cooperation between pools. We've already started to see the beginning of that with some of our, we have miners on the pool and we have marketplaces on the pool now, but I think we're going to have other, call it like a white label pool, but just a pool running Datum, servicing their own clients, and then sharing variance with other pools. And when enough small pools get together, we could very quickly be bigger than the largest pool, but not pose the same risk that they pose, because everybody's making their own blocks and you don't have risk of centralization. So I think a pool landscape is going to look way different, and that's only 5 years from now. And if and I'm really excited to see what Square did. Great company, Block, like they're leading the way. If that can sort of like be a catalyst for more adoption, more on-chain payments, more Lightning payments, I think we're going to see the block space start to fill up, and then we're going to get into the topic of block space scarcity, and that's when it's going to get really exciting. Because if you ask anybody now what's the value of a block, they'll say they'll like look at the 3,000 transactions, they'll add up all the fees, and they'll say this is the value of the block. It's subsidy plus the fee. But what happens when there isn't, like, let's say you're executing a big like multi-million-dollar real estate contract, and it has to close by November, by November 30th at 11:59 p.m. or you don't get the deal. Like, the value of the block to you at that point is not the fees, it's the opportunity cost of what you're missing out on. So what does that mean? It means block space will become its own commodity separate from Bitcoin itself. And there's already companies like Block Spaces out of Miami that are working on like block space futures contracts, for example, where consider a financial institution that knows they need to make 30 Bitcoin transactions over the next 30 days, and they don't want the risk of the volatility of the fees in the market. They could go out to the market, the peer-to-peer network, and they could pay the market price, or they could just go to their favorite miner who's running Datum and say, I'll pay you X amount premium, 10% premium, if you guarantee me access to your blocks over the next 30 days. So I think we could see an explosion of an entirely new industry of miners who have taken back their sovereignty, who are now carving out block space for different companies. And that it's just going to be like 5D chess at that point. And 2030 sounds close, but it's 5 years away. I've only been in the space since 22, and so it's going to be like crazy.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about the software side, but yeah, that sounds wild. Fighting over block space. Matt?
Yeah, the thing you mentioned earlier about Bitcoin coming into trades, that's actually basically my business.
Oh.
I am an engineer who was raised by carpenters and farmers. So that's a lot of the people I've worked with were described as digital farmers.
And how many of the people that are, say, around your age, give or take some years, and are interested and willing to pay attention to Bitcoin versus the people that are your seniors and your father's age?
Well, I guess in my own experience, conservative Midwest, when hard work kind of people haven't readily followed the computer stuff. They'll hand to guys. But I just meant kind of that's how we built up the business, was starting with trades. Like I have done 100 kilowatt electrical installed for a dole center in Mountain Shop some years ago. We built all our own. Maintain all the tools to do our own assembly lines. The actual question pertaining to hash rate. What I've seen in the last few years was there's several orders of magnitude more heat or more electricity is used for heating than is used for the entire global logic. Which there's been a growing push lately, and I expect it to continue to leverage heating as a primary output of a miner. I think it was around 2015. There was a big hype about putting miners in everything. We had the miners put an ASIC in a wires rod, put an ASIC in RGB vehicle. There was a lot of talk about just throwing miners in a bunch of stuff because they said, okay, well, it's already got an internet connection throughout mining, and it fizzled, never went anywhere because the economics don't make sense. You've got the extra support components of power handling and heat handling, and then the interface controls for the chip itself, and the hash rate you get out of it would never pay that off. And then you've got the additional cost of managing the heat. So I think a lot of devices like refrigerators and stuff will never see fractables here in miner because there's always the secondary cost of dealing heat. If heat is what you need, absolutely. And I think in 5 years we'll see a significant fraction of the global hash rate is actually dedicated heaters. Whether it's in greenhouses or cools or just space heaters in someone's office. As for I'm filling notes of the things, I think there's probably more possibility because again you're just looking at the cost of materials, which Mrs. mentioned is not great currently, but there's possibilities by lessening requirements on the software side, right, to reduce the hardware requirements needed. So it's definitely possible to have coordinates of goodness because there are fewer byproducts that you have to manage, right? There's not as you and a lot of the computational infrastructure was on present by a lot of the passive. That's certainly possible.
Matt, closing thoughts, what you envision for 2030 and what you think things will look like, possibly?
Yeah, I have to agree with Alex. Projections are hard, but hash rate does go exponentially. So I think I don't really have a prediction, and maybe it could, 2x from here. Maybe we do C3 Zeta, but I mean, one thing's for sure is that more people are going to come online, right? More industries pop up. As for who's going to put an ASIC in a refrigerator, is it going to be something DIY, or does GE or Samsung develop a business model that could do so? Can they sell 500 million refrigerators and come up with a business model where they get a percentage of every block found? I don't know. That's going to be some of the exciting things about being in the home mining space, seeing those things develop. And I think one of the really important things and the grand scheme of things is the open source side of it, because it opens up, it's like a book that opened up for people to be able to contribute and have this documentation and have things to sort of guide them. We have fantastic conversations with really great people who are, still in college, engineers, who love the documentation side of things. They love to take the deep dive in, and there are people creating amazing things out there, and not everything mainstream is the only thing going on. There are so many other things going on in the space that people don't even really get to talk about, because maybe we just don't have enough time, or maybe it just doesn't get the coverage it needs for whatever reason. But there's a lot of exciting things happening, and the future is, I think the future of Bitcoin mining is very bright. We just need to make sure that our incentive is to keep the Bitcoin network going and provide the right documentation for people to be able to continue to innovate. And with that innovation, with open source innovation, things tend to progress exponentially instead of being you don't get the same iPhone 6 to 9 times, right? Sometimes you get new things very, very quickly in the space. Sometimes you can't keep up. Like it's hard keeping up how fast things come out. So future of Bitcoin mining's bright. Hash rate's going to go up over a long period of time. If you look closely, it goes up and down, just like Bitcoin's price. But we all know where we're going.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was the Great Re-Decentralization talk, talking about after years of industrial consolidation, Bitcoin mining is fighting to reclaim its cypherpunk roots. Matt, Mark, Alex, Hobbyist Miner, thank you.
Thank you.